Good evening and welcome to the Legion Cantina. In today's episode, we're going through a unit review of the Commander Luke expansion for Star Wars Legion. Now, I've always been a big believer in Op Luke. I never quite understood the sort of reasons for taking Commander Luke. I thought his Saber was underwhelming. I thought losing out and disengage, no Master of the Force. I was a bit baffled as to why you would even run this guy. And while he has obviously that ranged option, I just never thought it would be anything that was particularly useful, so I kind of discarded that. But having now run Luke in a couple of games, I do get it, and I don't know if he's better than Operative Luke, but I think he does offer something to the Rebels that right now they are sorely in need of. So yeah, I'm going to talk through him today and just see, should you be taking Op Luke? Should you be taking Commander Luke? So, first of all, to go through his strengths, he's 120 points, so 45 less than his operative, and it does actually leave him within a reasonable points range of the other commander options in Rebels. So, generally with full kit, he'll be coming in around 135, 140, sometimes 145 if you take everything. Generally, Leia with full kit's probably like 80 or 90. Han, who's the other commander I'd say is worth taking Rebels right now, normally comes in like 110, 115-ish, depending on how you kit him out. So Luke is a chunk more expensive, but offers you something very different and crucially something a lot more survivable than those other options. The big motivation is he does just fill that commander slot. The only other commander I kind of think is kind of extremely strong right now, although I don't know actually if Luke is extremely strong. I think he's just extremely strong in the commander slot. I'd say the only other option worth taking for me right now is Shrivin the Bus, just for that field commander. I really struggle. I think Leia now is too flimsy, and if you are leaving her far back, I think she can offer something as a support commander, but I think a lot of what makes Rebels strong, and particularly what makes Luke Bad Batch Din, which is a very competitive way to run Rebels strong, is their objective play, and I think Leia doesn't quite offer that same firepower. I think Han can do. He's maybe a bit of a middle ground between Leia and Luke, but again, I don't think he's as solid as what Luke offers you for maybe only 30 more points. And I think it is generally worth that upgrade. The main reasons you're taking him are for, I would say, I am a Jedi overwhelmingly more than anything else. That command card is so strong in the right situation and can absolutely ruin somebody's day. So yeah, really, really useful one to have access to. And you serve your master well situationally as well, whether it's going on your own sleep or making another of your enemies really strong units shoot the other one. There are some really good options. And while it is a little bit tricky to get Mind Trick on Commander Luke, because generally you're looking for burst of speed, it is definitely an option. It can be a really powerful threat to have up your sleeve. The main thing that Luke offers in terms of that survivability is just that 1 or 2 turns where you have that dodge ready to go and you activate block. And it does just make him really difficult to kill when he's going up against an enemy force user who normally, if you didn't have that surge to defend and that dodge, would probably be doing like an extra hit or two through, and that might just be enough to keep you alive one more turn, which is hugely valuable. So in some ways, in the situations you're going to be using him, he's kind of a bit tougher than Op Luke because you don't really want Op Luke to be out in the open that often. So while he does have access to deflect, if you're leaving Op Luke in a spot where he's going to need to activate it, something's probably gone a bit wrong. So a lot of the time you're going to be using your force user behind line of sight blocking. And while it is useful for maybe if you get left out in the open a bit and then you do have access to that surge to defend, hopefully there won't be that many situations where you need it. Whereas in melee, Commander Luke having access to that block and that surge to defend can be hugely valuable. Courage 3 Commander as well. This is something that Rebels really are able to take advantage of because it just makes it so much harder to panic your troops in that bubble around Luke. And on those crucial turns where you are scoring those objectives, it's super nice to have. And even that Inspire 2 can just be really nice just for taking, that crucial 1 or 2 suppression off maybe a Rebel Trooper or something, just to get you that extra objective. Because with the way that a lot of Rebel lists, definitely the ones we saw at Worlds, were playing, it is a lot about that objective play and taking that more aggressive stance. And I think Luke plays that that really well. And the blaster, on the occasions you do need it, it's really good with that sharpshooter one, that PS1, the red and three black. So maybe you're already stood on an objective, and if you are there, you might be able to. I'm not saying you'll be able to get off an aim necessarily, but even a move shoot or something just on that crucial last turn can be really nice to have. And while it's not going to come off that often. It is a really nice thing to have now that that blaster is very strong. His weaknesses should be pretty obvious. His damage is not that high for a Saber user. He's comparable to the Inquisitors, I'd say, in that kind of way. Like, he has a very similar Saber, and only getting access to PS1 really does reduce your damage output. So, I'm not often taking Son of Skywalker when I would run Commander Luke. Like, if there were no other one pip options, I probably would take it, but it's not something I'm looking to build around that often because, as we'll look at later, it really doesn't add that much damage. So it's not really enough of a command card to be running in the current version of Legion where you need to be so explosive. The way Commander Luke plays is very different to Operative Luke. Operative Luke, I'd say, is kind of clearing objectives, maybe by himself in some cases with that force push, and he does actually have, while not loads of damage, probably enough damage to be scary to your opponent. The problem with Commander Luke is he can't really do that, but what he can do really well, especially because his damage output isn't that high, is using I Am a Jedi on a turn to, shut down a Vader, shut down, I don't know, a Dooku or whatever, can be really nice. And just taking your opponent's big units away from them for a turn, because Luke is pretty cheap, and if he can just slow down an opponent's units for a turn or two, he's kind of done his job. Because if they spend 200 and something points on a Vader and you're able to effectively nullify them using Commander Luke, then that's a really valuable thing to have. And you don't actually worry that much if Luke dies, because while he is fairly expensive, like losing 140 points is not that big a deal. And generally, it's a bit like if Din dies, for instance. Like, Din maybe dives in, does a lot of damage, but if they're getting shot that much, it generally means that they've kind of got their points. So you can think about it that way. The other thing is, if he's not getting an order, obviously order control can be all over the place, and it's why I'm almost always taking prepared supplies when I would be bringing Luke, because having that sort of proactive dodge ready to go for that block is really nice. So yeah, it's the classic rebel problem of you do have these really powerful units that can make big plays. It's just whether or not you get them out of the stack in time. And especially, if you're running the meta inverted commas combo of Bad Batch and Din or something, it does just mean that you're probably going to be giving orders to them over Luke preferentially, because they arguably have higher damage output and might be making a play on that turn in which Luke just doesn't have the capacity to do that. And yeah, the points thing is interesting. Like, I wouldn't say he's cheap, but I would say he can often feel in the right games like he is good value. But yeah, 135, 140 is is a decent number of points, but it's comparable to, more like a Ventress than Op Luke, who's comparable to Dooku, for instance, right? Like, that it's probably an extra activation in Rebels, is maybe you can think about it, or some heavy kit on your dudes or whatever, and it does fulfill that commander slot, which, like I said before with Rebel Troopers, while Rebel Troopers aren't in of themselves hugely powerful, because you have to take some core, it does make the units in that option in that slot better. And especially when the Rebel Operative slot is as competitive as it is, if Commander Luke and Operative Luke are relatively comparable in terms of their sort of power and how effective they are, then Commander Luke becomes better because the Commander slot is less competitive. Whereas the Rebel Operative slot, as I've said a few times now, is really, really competitive. And being able to take Luke, Bad Batch, Din is a really strong combination and gives you three units that can make plays by themselves without worrying too much about them dying. I would have liked Relentless overcharge. I get why they wanted the charge, but just being able to, occasionally ping off with that blaster would have been super nice. So, yeah, I think it is a little bit of a shame, but him getting Relentless would have felt a bit weird because it maybe is reserved for, I was about to say there's more elite ones, but Ventress gets it. So, maybe not, but yeah, it just would have been maybe a nice little change to get you more use out of that blaster. So let's talk about his command cards. This is going to be very different to the operative one because obviously different command cards sort of become good. I'll start with the one pips. As I've said before, I don't think Son of Skywalker is the way to go unless you're really tight for options. I think I'm going to keep talking about this sort of, Din thing. I don't think I would ever take this over, this is the way, his 1 pip, for instance. So yeah, I think this is an okay take, but not one that's kind of first and foremost in your mind. You serve your master well, I would take over Son of Skywalker. It's not always going to pay off, but it's likely you'll be able to use it on a unit that has higher damage output than Commander Luke. So that's, I think, a good option. And it can be tricky, getting a free move on a unit is pretty good as well. Like, I think this works on Tauns as well. So that could be an interesting thing. Obviously, you wouldn't get that Relentless off, but being able to do a big move with a unit or something can be just as valuable as shooting sometimes. So yeah, I'd take Serve Your Master well over Son of Skywalker. In terms of 2 pips, I think my allies the Force. Yeah, I'm not gonna say it's underrated. I think it's a reasonably solid command card. I'd like to see something with a little bit more flash, but for getting a dodge on Commander Luke, it's good. And I think any cards that give dodges inherently gain more value when they're going onto Commander Luke, just because you really want to have that block on as often as you can. And this is a reasonable one. And if you've got Underworld connections, you can give an order to Bad Batch, give them a dodge, and then Din still gets his independent, and that would work super well. For the surprises, I saw a few people taking this at Worlds, and I think it's fine. I mean, it gives him a dodge token, which is nice, and rolling the extra defense die is always good. But yeah, maybe on that turn after you've I'm a Jedi'd and maybe you're still in melee and you're just, you're going to be fighting maybe one elite hero, getting those extra defense dice would be good because 3 white defense die on average, if you are surging, maybe gives you an extra save. So might just be enough. Bit like that date. It's a bit like Danger Sense actually, this now I think about it. But yeah, I would take my allies the Force over full of surprises in the 2-pip slot. Return of the Jedi again. Saw a couple of these at Worlds, and I guess again it's just because you're likely going to be giving an order to Luke anyway, and it gives him a dodge in the active way rather than any other unit giving him a dodge with an action or something. So yeah, it's a very mediocre command card, but in some cases you need it. Like compare this to Vader's Master of Evil, for instance, and Vader's gives more suppression in a proactive way. This takes off less suppression in a reactive way. So it's not great, but it gives him a dodge, and that's kind of the main thing you're doing. And again, you could do the Luke Bad Batch Din thing if that's what you wanted to do. I Am a Jedi is the best command card for Commander Luke, and I'd say it's by quite a distance. Unless your opponent is not running any big trooper threats, yeah, it's just amazing. And you, there are times you'll hit 2 pretty big units with this, because sometimes people have, say, Magnas by Dooku or Royal Guard by Vader, or I don't know, Arcs by Anakin, stuff like this. And what you can also do is, if you have, because the beauty with Rebels is you have more acts, if you can hold Luke back to the end, and then you might not even have to burst the speed in, but sometimes you might have to pop that burst of speed. You just get yourself to range 1 of 2 big enemy units, fire this off, and then you don't really have to worry about what happens next turn because you've already got that surge to defend set up. You become really tanky, and yeah, you can then just leave yourself, maybe you move off and score an objective or something. So it's really nice, and it opponents will know it is coming, but there's not that much they can really do to avoid you, unless, like, as long as you can leave Luke fairly late on the first turn, you'll normally be able to move fairly close to their big threat. And unless they sort of run away from Luke or something, there's always going to be that one turn where they can't do anything, and it feels good. It's a real feel good command card when you're using it with Commander Luke, and yeah, it can really swing some games if used at the right time. So definitely worth putting in with Luke, with Commander Luke if you're taking him. Even on Op Luke, like I've started taking this with Op Luke a couple of times, and it's okay. Like it feels a bit worse because Commander Luke's damage output is so much higher, but it's still decent, and yeah, it will never hurt to have this in your pocket. A bit like change of plans with Han or something. Just having that ready to go is always a good option. So yeah, always bring this one if you're taking Luke. Let's talk about some damage outputs, because I've been talking about how Commander Luke's is just so much lower than Op Luke's. So got 2 sort of rows of tables here. This is both of their sabers into red saves. So the top one is against basic saves, and then the bottom one is into red surging saves. And you can see that basically against a normal sort of saving unit, you lose about a wound, and then against impervious, you lose just under a wound, and then against immune pierce, you lose about half a wound. And similarly for into red surging as well. So basically, what Op Luke Saber is giving you is a couple more hits and access to an extra amount of pierce, and that's what's just going to make your damage that bit more consistent. I think Commander Luke's Saber hits for about 3.5 on average, and I think Op Luke's hits for 4 and a bit on average. It's like 4.3 or something without aims. So again, the actual damage in terms of hits isn't that different, but it is just that extra bit of pierce. And there is also just potential for the high roll with Op Luke, which I think people tend to overestimate actually how much damage Op Luke is going to swing for, because generally he's only swinging for 4 pierce 2, which is not nothing. It's reasonable damage output, but it's maybe not as scary. I think when people see those 7 black dice, they're like, oh, that could wipe my unit, but it's actually quite rare for Op Luke to do that. But Commander Luke doesn't really have that possible upside. Like the best he's going to do is 5 pierce 1, which is the same as Fleets, which is not that good. So yeah, it it's kind of, I think it's on that sort of kind of barrier between, I just wouldn't quite take Son of Skywalker with Commander Luke, but I probably would take it with Op Luke just for that chance that, especially I like to take Hunter with my Op Luke just for the on that turn where maybe you're attacking, an enemy hero and you do just get a couple of really good swings off with those aims. There is that potential. I'd never really do that with Commander Luke. So yeah, the damage is not massively different, but it's different enough that I think they take on quite different roles. But does just make it feel better when you use I'm a Jedi on Commander Luke because you're not losing out on that much. So look at some different ways you can run Luke. The budget version is just burst of speed, prepared supplies. I think burst of speed, I hate to say it's like an auto take because I think that's always a cliche, but I think it's really difficult to leave burst of speed off a force user now. It's not becoming as oppressive as force push was back in the day when it was 10 points, but burst of speed is extremely good, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went up. Uh, Dating this video now, but wouldn't be surprised if it went up in in the upcoming points update. But yeah, and then I think you take prepared supplies. For me, it's again really good for what I plan to use my Lukes for in terms of that disruption, slowing people down. So I think it's a really solid take. I've seen people take something like Recon Intel, and I think that's okay if you want to get your Luke, up a bit closer and get ready to shut them down. Luke does, if you're taking certain command cards, Luke does have pretty good access to dodges. Like half his command cards do give access to dodges, and while I think 2 of them are on the weaker side, I think it's still perfectly valid if you have got that dodge set up to maybe run without prepared supplies. So you could even get him down to 130 if you really wanted to. But I think bursted speed with the combination of I'm a Jedi just gives him such good threat range that, yeah, it's a really useful thing to have. This is full kit Luke, so this is still prepared supplies and burst of speed, but with seize initiative and improvised orders or underworld connections if that's what you need to take. I think either one of those would be super good. Like having improv with rebels is so nice because on that turn 1 where you draw your operative early or you draw your special forces before you want them to or whatever, you can just tap it away and hope to hit something better. So when you are in a faction that has as poor order control as Rebel does, anything that can help it out is really good, especially if you are running, as I've said, commanders, 2 operatives, and support corps, all this stuff. Like it's just a mess. So having a bit more consistency is always good. And then seize initiative, I think, is great. I wouldn't run tenacity on Luke. I've seen a couple of lists that run him, and I don't get that. Like maybe if you're then looking, for more damage on Luke, maybe that's a thing, but no, I don't see it personally. And then option 3, my Luke. This is, I would run him exactly as same as the previous option, and obviously in the list I've been talking about, you would need the underworld connections, but ideally you have improv. But if you do need those 2 mercs, then fire away and take underworld connections. But yeah, I think my skepticism about Commander Luke was based around the idea that he didn't have the damage output to be worth the upgrade over Han and Leia. But the more I played the game and thought about how my rebel lists were actually working, the more I understand. And now, having played a few games with him, I understand how and why he is as powerful as he is, because he is just a piece that your opponents will be afraid of, not because of the damage output he offers, but because of I'm a Jedi and, to a lesser extent, you serve your master well. They can just wreck in certain scenarios and cause so much havoc that, while Luke by himself doesn't actually do that much, it's just it can really ruin and slow down your opponent's day, and they will be concerned about that. And Han and Leia, while they are good in their own rights, just don't offer that same potential sort of fear, as it were. And when you've got, in most of the metas you see, Din, Bad Batch, or both, when you've got those guys running around as well, you then have three units that just take so much killing. Like, Din is very tough. Bad Batch are almost unkillable if you keep them hidden for the first turn and into the second turn. And then when you've got your damage of, Pathfinder, Sleeper Cell, your ATRTs running around behind, it does just become a lot to deal with, because with the way you can play objectives now, especially if you've got reach with, speeder bikes or tawns sort of tucked in the back as well, it is so difficult for your opponent to actually keep you off all three objectives. Sorry, all the objectives at once. And yeah, I think while Luke's damage output is never going to be that impressive, I think his ability to be a disruptive piece is always going to be valuable, and that's why I think he is worth taking. And why I'll say I was wrong. Like, I would actually argue that I think Commander Luke is better than Op Luke. Not as a unit in and of himself, but because he clears the space for you to take other powerful operatives in Rebels, and he fulfills that commander slot. I've said all this stuff already, and he can be quite order hungry. Like, it depends, and if he is kind of the main guy running things, then he will probably want an order. And the fact that he's probably going to be your only commander as well means that Seize Initiative is probably going to be worth it most of the time, because on that turn where maybe it's like the second turn or something just before you dive, that's really when I think Seize can be useful. Because say you're playing it with, Din on his relentless one pip turn, just having that order on Luke so you can time things and know what's going to happen when, I think that could be really valuable. So yeah, I think worth popping for Seize Initiative on Luke most of the time. The final point I've made here is don't be afraid to put him at risk. Like, if he buys you time is a resource in this game now. Like, it's not all about killing your opponent and dealing damage. It's about buying your units time to get to where they need to be. And if Luke sacrifices himself to really slow and bog down your opponent, then so much the better. And if, yeah, as I've said, if you can slow down a Vader or a Dooku for even a turn or two, then that's definitely valuable. And I think just don't be prepared to lose him, but understand that in losing him, you probably will have gathered some time, and yeah, you might well end up winning the game, even if it feels like you're on the back foot. Yeah, for this list on the right hand side, this is a little bit of a twist on kind of the lists I've been talking about. So you got Luke with the standard kit I've been saying, although no CZ initiative here. Although I think I probably would run both of Luke's one pips in this. Could take Mechanical Carnage on IG, but maybe not. Yeah, and then Bad Batch and IG. I really like IG, and I just want him to be slightly better. I don't quite know how I want him to get slightly better. Maybe like a tactical one or something would be nice. I feel like a lot of units could benefit from a bit of tactical one. But yeah, and then you got Bad Batch in here because they're really good. Fleets and a scattergun, I will never back down from this hill. I think fleets of the scattergun are really strong, and I think having one unit of them standing behind a building ready to go is always going to be good, and it will really annoy your opponent. Two rebels with Astros. This is how I'm running my rebels troopers these days. And again, I like having units in the same slot that do very different things. So the rebel troopers will be sitting at the back, kind of buying time and healing stuff up. So if you draw them early in the turn, that's great. They can heal one of the ATRTs up here, for instance. And then you can wait with the fleet troopers until you need to have them to come around the corner. Two rebel sleeper cell with the Astro. It's still really strong. I'm suspecting they're going to get nerfed in the upcoming balance update on Tuesday, but we shall see. And then Pathfinders with Bistan, Duck and Cover. If you can get Duck and Cover on your Pathfinders, absolutely go for it. It will probably keep them alive a little bit longer than they have any right to. And once they have that 3 suppression, they're almost always going to be getting heavy cover and they become super obnoxious. 2 ATRTs with the laser cannon. Again, suspecting these will probably be nerfed by the time this video actually goes out, but at the time of recording, they're still really strong and it's still the way to go. And then swoop bikes, if nothing in sort of the Rebel support slot get changed, I am going to do a video talking about why swoops are good, even though I used to think they were unusable. And spoiler alert, it's for similar reasons to why I suddenly think Commander Luke is really good. It turns out just being able to play objectives really well and having units that can annoy your opponent and offer lots of potential threat are really good. So yeah, stay tuned for that one. Let's talk how I'd play Luke on some different boards, and there won't be any huge surprises coming here, but it is different to the way I personally would play Operative Luke. So the 2 boards we've got here are Bunker Assault and Recover the Research. So I'll go through I'll go through Bunker Assault first. Here, just hunt Vader, just pin him down, don't let him get away, and especially if they're running Commander Vader, you've got a maneuverability advantage. You can just try and hound Vader as much as possible, and Vader is probably going to kill you on turn 3 or turn 4. After you've maybe I'm a Jedi'd on turn 2 or something, or if you're lucky, turn 3, and then maybe make it to turn 5. But Commander Luke probably won't make it through this game, but I would go as central as possible to kind of match where the Vader is, and then you just chase him down as much as possible. And if you only I am a Jedi on Vader, then that's absolutely fine. But if you are able to get it on another unit as well, then that's also great. And yeah, just make sure you're out of line of sight of the ATST, and you'll be absolutely golden. And try and have as many wounds as possible when you do hit Vader, because actually Vader into Luke is fairly good for you, because a typical Vader swing with his Saber probably does about 5 hits. If you have block, you're able to dodge 1, and then you're saving 2/3. So you might only take like 1 or 2 wounds from that Vader swing. And if you contrast that to, not having block in melee, that 5 almost always translates to like 2.5, 3. And like that swing is huge for staying alive an extra turn or 2. And yeah, if you are able to get, a dodge or 2, maybe a command card and up prepared supplies, even on the, the implacable turn, you're going to be doing really well. So yeah, weirdly, Vader is afraid of Luke, in my opinion. Not quite for the reasons, like, not that he's going to kill him, because, yeah, you might get a charge off with Luke, and if you're lucky, do like 1 or 2 wounds to Vader. But yeah, you are just going to be able to slow Vader down really effectively. And, people say you should take Force Push with Vader, and that's normally put Vader at like 240. And if Luke's at 145, then that 100-point swing is huge. So yeah, Luke can be really effective in that regard. Recover the Research. Again, like, I think you are just trying to hunt Vader here. Obviously, if they have like a secondary threat, for instance, I don't know, a Boba, or if they're running a Din in this Empire list, for instance, then if you do want to try and hound them instead, then that's also valid. I think Luke's really good. Well, he's decent at punching down, I think, is the way to think about it. Like, if he's able to get into melee with units that aren't supposed to be in melee, then he may actually be able to put in some work. But against units that are melee specialists, Dooku, Anakin, Vader, whatever, then you're not going to come out of that one ahead. But if you slow them down enough, you will buy yourself time and you will probably win the game. And it does weirdly work quite well thematically, because it's rebel gumption and they're sacrificing themselves. And especially on Recover the Research, if you do have Bad Batch, Din, and Luke, that's 1 for each of their 3 objectives, and they are not going to have time to clear you off all 3. Now, whether or not you're able to hold those and stay alive long enough to keep scoring, I don't know. But if you had, your 3 big threats spaced out quite evenly here, I don't actually know what, especially an Empire list, droids would have more of an answer, because maybe they're a bit tougher. But yeah, it's just think of Luke as that disruptive piece, not as a damage dealer. And I think, yeah, definitely as a commander in the Rebel faction, I think he's definitely one of the strongest right now. Now, we are left with the question of a tier list position. I think in an upcoming video, I probably will do a bit of an update on these, because these are now starting to look a little bit outdated. I think From my previous video with Sabine, I will have slid her down to B tier, and I think that's probably fair. I think I probably slightly overrated her, although again hoping that there's a nice little update coming there. But I'm going to put Luke next to Din at the top of A tier. I think for now he's probably as good as like an ATRT or Din in that kind of top of A tier section. But I think S tier is reserved for I think Rebels' two best units almost subjectively in Bad Batch and Sleeper Cell. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. I think also, just I'm going to get this out ahead of time so I look like a genius if it does happen. If we do see a nice little buff to Ahsoka and Sabine, I think there's a nice list with Commander Luke, Sabine, Ahsoka, because the dodge generation in that list, with 3 units that really like dodges, could be super nice. So yeah, keep an eye out. Keep an eye out for that one if it does appear post points changes. But maybe I'm just being too optimistic. We shall see how we go. Yeah, thank you very much for listening. I hope this sort of made sense, and I think there will definitely be units that I change my opinion on as I kind of make these videos and my feelings on them develop. But yeah, let me know what you think about Commander Luke versus Op Luke in the comments below, and I'll see you for the next one.